also look at some global stories that we've been tracking for you bright and early this morning. And the US GDP increased at a 2.1% annualized rate last quarter. That was revised down from 2.4% pace reported last month. Now, the US economic growth was revised lower to a still solid pace in the second quarter, but momentum appears to have picked up early in the third quarter as a tight labor market underpins consumer spending. The economy grew at a 2% pace in the first quarter, and it seems to continue to push ahead despite that 525 bips worth of interest rate hikes from the Fed Reserve since March of 2022. Now, as of now, Wall Street seeing mixed trade. We also spoke with Manish Singh, the Chief Investment Officer at Crossbridge Capital, and Madhvi Arora of MK Global on their views on the US GDP numbers coming in. Listen in to what they had to say.
The economic conditions in the US are tightening. And when those lag effect of high interest rates are going to hit the economy, that's when these concerns are going to become very, very real. I mean, look at the yield curve inverted, well, probably over a year ago, or at least a year ago. It doesn't mean that you have recession immediately, because historically, if you go back and look at data going back 1960s, then it takes between 14 months, sometimes even 2 years, for recession to start once the yield curve has inverted. So it's not that recession has been abated. So far, it is staying away.
India's recovery post-COVID has been driven disproportionately by exports. In fact, exports growth was, contribution of that was as high as 40% plus in the last 3 years or so. And it was not just goods export, but even services export, which was a big, lever for overall growth for the economy last year specifically.
Well, I think that the most important piece of data from this revision was that the core PCE numbers also got revised lower. And what we saw from yesterday with the lower than expected JOLTS number, this market wants any data point that points to less Fed will be celebrated by this market, and that's what we're seeing. We also had ADP private payrolls this morning come in below expectations, and I think as we move into the later parts of the third quarter and the fourth quarter, I think that the focus is going to be less on bringing inflation down, because inflation is coming down. I think the focus is going to be more on what are the costs of bringing down inflation. Of course, less job opportunities, slower consumer spending, and less momentum for servicers on the revenue side.
Well, when China sneezes, the whole world gets a cold. So Chinese private property player Country Garden has warned that it could default on its vast debt, as it reported a loss of around $7 billion for the first 6 months of the year. The company confirmed that it had missed interest payments to holders of some of its bonds earlier this month. Meanwhile, another real estate developer, 1K, also reported lower profit in the first half of the year.
Staying with China, then, however, consumer spending seemed to be back on track in August after a tepid July, as per the China Beige Books survey. Now, all 5 categories, namely apparels, automotive, food, furniture and appliances, as well as luxury, saw a marked increase in sales this month. The services sector revenge spending basket also saw continued strength.
And shifting focus, US government has expanded restrictions on some Nvidia AI chips exports to certain countries in West Asia. The company said that with the curbs, which will affect select chips, would not have any immediate material impact. Remember, a similar move was also announced last year, which signaled an escalation of the US crackdown on China.
And let's shift focus to some earnings then, because cloud-based software company Salesforce reported its Q2 earnings surpassing Wall Street expectations, sending the shares soaring in extended trading. However, during the con call, the CFO said an uncertain economy continues to pressure Salesforce's growth.
The Biden administration has approved the first ever U.S. military transfer to Taiwan under a program generally reserved for assistance to sovereign independent states. It is said that it would Taiwan's self-defense capabilities through joint as well as combined defense capability, as well as enhanced maritime domain awareness, as well as maritime security capability.
Well, and all